Hey guys, welcome to Auxano. This is Auxano number 5. For the first time, we are actually not going to be using a traditional camera setup. Riverside.fm has been the platform that has reached out, and it's what we're going to be using. Today, we are joined with an awesome guest, Mr. Anson Young. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Beau. This is a cool project, so I'm happy to I'm excited to see how this goes. I think it'll be awesome.
Thank you so much. I thought it was really dope because I was typing late at night one time, and I was like, I don't even know why I'm on Reddit, but here I am. Let me try to look for podcast guests on our podcast exchange. And I was shocked at the amount of people that were like, hey, man, I just sent you a DM. What's actually really crazy is I remember seeing your video on Bigger Pockets. I think it was how to analyze a flip.
Nice.
And so it's really cool because Bigger Pockets, when I was trying to become a real estate investor, was like my entire world. I was trying to become a real estate investor when I was in the military in 2019
Okay.
is when I first started the real estate investing journey. So in a way, like maybe you don't feel this way, but it's like meeting like a celebrity or like a hero. It's like, bro, this guy has helped so many people. So thank you so much for hopping on. For remote guests, I wanted to try something new. It's called Let's Get Deep, and it is a card game.
All right.
So it is going to be on level 1 will be Icebreaker, level 2 will be Deep, and then level 3 will be Deeper. So without further ado, here we go. Mr. Anson, which card, left or right?
Let's just go with the left.
Left. The question is, what is the best fast food restaurant?
Oh man. I talk about this a lot with my son because just trying out different places and always try to get him to think about ranking things and I do have like a side kind of like fun podcast with two friends of mine and we just like rank random things, totally like zero agenda. We're trying to hang out more, and that was a good excuse to do it. But so I have put a lot of thought into this.
Okay.
um, I used to not be like an in and out guy. Um, and they weren't available in Colorado, so it wasn't a big deal. I've been to one in Vegas, Phoenix, and LA, and so I didn't really care that one came to Colorado. Now I think we have like 4 or 5, but so I didn't really care. But my son wanted to try it, so we went, and I realized just how good like it is versus a lot of the other restaurants. And so I'm gonna just say I'm gonna go out on a limb. I'm gonna say In and Out, even though someone from or myself from 5 years ago would have scoffed at that. So so yeah, it's good. I'm not gonna like go out of my way for it, but it's definitely above all the other burger places. So
Okay. I'm from San Diego
okay,
originally. So yeah, In and Out was
yeah,
was usually the place we'd go to.
yep,
All right, all right. I'm surprised that that In and Out branched out. Like I know, actually, I don't because I know that they moved to
yeah,
Texas also.
yeah.
So they're getting out there. They're getting out
For a long time it was like this exclusive, like if you're from California you knew about it, and then I think they went to Vegas and Phoenix, and then they didn't expand for like years, and then all of a sudden they're starting to
there. Yeah.
grow outwards, but I don't know.
I mean, good for them. That's more real estate, you know.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, for sure.
Well, moving on to level 2 on Deep. Which side?
Let's stick with the left. I think we're having good luck over there.
Left. Deep asks, if you could switch places for the day with one of your friends, who would you choose and why?
Man, that is a good one. um I think I'd probably switch with uh I'd switch with my good friend Andy. Um, he's just been my best friend for a long time since we were in high school, and he lives down in Florida. And he has he's a year older than me, but he has a son who's just under a year old, and so we're like 12 years apart on the age of our kids, but it would be fun to switch places with him and experience, my, I call him my nephew. We're not brothers, obviously, but my little nephew at 1 years old, that would be fun to swap places and hang out with him and his family for the day. I think it'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, moving on to level 3, deeper.
Oh, here we go.
Which side?
I think we're just gonna stick with the left. We got a
Left.
theme.
Wow. Wow. This is actually a loaded question. This is actually something I would usually ask on a
All
podcast.
right.
Deeper is, what do you believe is our ultimate purpose in life?
I think that's subjective. So I think that everybody has their own answer to that question, just depending on their background, their how they were raised, their parents, their culture. Everybody's going to have a different answer to that. So I don't think that there really is an ultimate purpose, except for one that you find for yourself and that makes you feel fulfilled and happy. I have a purpose, I have like a kind of a personal mission statement that I have up on my wall over here, so I can look at it every day. But I mean, it does start off with like my purpose in this life, and then the rest of it from there may not make any sense to, 98% of other people. And so I think that that's my purpose, and you have your own purpose, and everybody out there kind of has their own ultimate purpose of why they're here. And you just have to, I think the part of that journey is just figuring it out for yourself and what that actually looks like. It could be helping people, could be helping animals, whatever that looks like for you. There is no wrong answer, I don't think.
Since I'm nosy, do you mind reading off your?
I'll read off. Let's see. I have this light in the way, but so my purpose is to. It's kind of hard to read it because the light's a little weird, but my purpose is uh, to provide a truly amazing life for my family and for myself. And then it kind of goes into different categories of like health and finances
Gotcha.
and like helping others and stuff like that. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
Well, that's actually a really good segue into usually the first question that I ask almost every guest is, what did you want to do when you were a kid?
Oh man, I honestly had no idea. I didn't have like a target of like I want to be a fireman or something like that. Like for a while, I think the closest I could get to that would probably be that I wanted to be a chef. Like my grandfather would cook. Like I'd go over to his house once a week for dinner, and he would cook dinner and he would have me help out. And I found, I think, some sort of just fun or like a sense of accomplishment in that. And so I think for a while it was like I could probably do this, like in my teenage years. Um, and it was never enough of a passion to go pursue it, after high school or anything like that. I do it. I still enjoy like cooking, and I still enjoy like making good quality things. But I'm not. I don't think I was cut out for the the chef life. So
Gotcha. I love how that we have that in common because in most Filipino households, actually, especially in mine, I was raised with my grandmother
mm,
in the house. So the smell of like onions and the smell of like steamed rice wasn't uncommon.
yeah.
And so any chance I got, I'd be like, all right, grandma, like, let me help you out. Like, do you need me to cut the onions, the garlic? Um, I think that's really cool. But now that you've mastered your craft, I would say, now that you've gone outside of the scope of what you originally intended as a child, what life advice would you give that child?
Um, yeah, because I mean, I've been a few different things. I've been in IT, and I've been a bartender, and I've been, um, now doing a few different things in real estate. You know,
Mhm.
I would, I think that the advice that I would give that kid myself would be to really, really be proactive and laser focus on something that you actually that you really want, and that will be beneficial for the long term. I think for maybe 5 or 6 years, I kind of just like floated around in all kinds of different aspects. I was in bands. I got married. Um, I didn't have like this driving focus of like, even in IT, it wasn't like, hey, I want to, go get my certifications and I want to be the network engineer or the network admin and then move up from there. It was just kind of like, it was kind of like just take life as it comes and have no real direction. And that lack of focus definitely hurt me in a lot of different ways. And so I would just tell that kid to, be very proactive and, really find out what you want to do and go after that, like head down charging towards it.
Hmm. So, what would you say the origins of your path are? Or, I'm sorry, let me rephrase it. What would you say the origins of your path became?
Um, what do you mean exactly?
In this current field that you're
Oh,
in,
like
especially
where
with.
I, what, how I came to be interested in this and then pursue it, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So yeah, I was between, or I got laid off in IT, and so,
Hmm.
uh, like everybody else did in like 2003, like all my friends were laid off. We were all in the same boat, and so, I was bartending for a while. We were totally fine on money, my wife and I, um, and so I was just trying to figure out like what I really wanted to do, if I wanted to go double down on IT. My dad was in uh, IT for telecom his entire career. So he basically spent all 30 years at the same company. And so, and, and it was like, well, I know that that's safe, or at least I thought it was. Um, and I had some interest in it. It wasn't like, something that got me up every day and made me excited. But so, I had this kind of crossroads of, do I double down on IT, go get more certifications, or do I do something else? I had no idea what that something else was. So I just started doubling down on IT. I was like getting more, starting to get more certifications. I lined up, a mentor to kind of help me um, get more Cisco certified. And um, it was weird because my brother they just had their first kid. They live down in Phoenix, and our family's pretty small, so this is our first niece that we've ever had. Nephew, we don't have a, it was like our first family member who was having kids. And so I was like, I'm laid off, and my wife has a pretty easy job that she can transfer or get a different one, or like in the same field. And so it was like, well, we want to try something different. So we want to be closer to family while they're raising, their daughter, and be part of her life and not be, 1,000 miles away. So we decided to move down to Phoenix. And right before we left, my friend Paul handed me the book Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. It's a very basic origin story for real estate investors and agents. But I didn't think too much of it until I started reading it, and I was literally reading it when it wasn't my turn to drive the U-Haul when we were driving down to Phoenix. I'm just like reading this thing like crazy, and it's just blowing my mind. Like I didn't know that you could get two mortgages. I didn't know that, obviously like the concept of renting made sense, that there's a landlord and that there's a renter, but like how you can leverage that, and just a lot of those things that were just blowing my mind. And so when we got down to Phoenix, I lined up a bartending job because it's just easy to get and pays the bills. And I said, and I literally had these two paths in front of me. Do I want to try this very unknown, risky thing of real estate? My mind's blown, and I know that that a lot of these things make sense now. Or do I want to go down the path of IT and really just kind of like the safer path? And once I landed down in Phoenix, it was kind of like new city, new opportunities. Like, let's go after this real estate thing. And so I kind of just dropped all of my real estate, or excuse me, my IT certifications. And I just started going to real estate meetups, started talking to every agent and investor that I can get in front of, and really just starting that path of learning, what it takes to be successful in this business. And so it really was just this crossroads. And I chose I chose one way. It could have gone the other way, but I chose that way, and it was all kind of spurned by that book, which a lot of investors will tell you it was kind of a mindset shift for them as well. So it's very basic origin story, but it's mine too. So um,
I mean, I think that's a phenomenal origin story. Mostly just because like James Clear, he's the author of Atomic Habits. Everybody everybody completes a goal, and I think one of the problems that we had, quote unquote, was a goal is merely a momentary change, whether good or bad. But when we complete the goals and move conquest to conquest, that it's generally it's a bout of motivation for us to just go out and conquer the next thing. But in this season of life that you're into, because I at least I am inferring, because like you're on YouTube, you're with Bigger Pockets. Which conquest is next for you? Which challenge? Which obstacle?
I mean, professionally, um, the the there's just a couple different ways that you can go, like in the long, I guess, in the end game of real estate. And you either, really scale and you go crazy and you try to get, thousands of units or whatever that looks like for you. Um, or a lot of people will continue down like a lifestyle path where it's like, this more than pays for my bills and lets me, give back to my community and all of that. I'm not chasing, millions and millions of dollars. And I'm more in that second camp of like, you know, I want to take on worthwhile projects. I'm now wanting to take on more projects that are, that are at least more interesting. There's more things that are interesting than money for sure, but like, sustainability and affordability and giving back inside of the communities that we work in is becoming a lot more important. And I still love taking really terrible properties and turning them into something nice that somebody can then move into and really appreciate and be proud of. And so so some of that might look up like ground up development. I have a pretty strong interest in that and turning just raw dirt into something that's interesting. And then on the sustainability side, there's this kind of mass timber movement that's actually really interesting to me of sustainable timber building. That's it's actually quicker and less expensive than traditional building, and it's 100% sustainable with how they do it. And so like things like that like are now piquing my interest, where maybe 5 years ago I would not I wouldn't care nearly as much about them. um
Yeah.
and so yeah, it's like kind of looking more at the bigger picture of either sustainability or affordability, giving back inside communities.
You say building from the ground up. Were you actually able to? Well, actually, no, because you're not in California. I keep thinking that a lot of the real estate greats are like all in California. But like Elon Musk just bought like the tiny home. Is that like in the future for you? Like I don't know what the company is called, but if we're talking about like
Right.
sustainability, is that something that would interest you too?
Yeah, I mean, maybe not something that's that economy, but like some of the projects that kind of caught my eye were like workforce housing. Like here in Colorado, we have a lot of resort towns. California does as well, but inside those resort towns, affordability is a problem, where the house prices and condo prices and rents have gone so far up that the people who live there to sustain the entire industry there, so like the people who operate the ski lifts, from the guys washing the dishes, and the restaurants that are there that the tourists come visit, like everybody in that spectrum needs a place to live. And so a lot of these towns are now realizing that, but like you can't squeeze out the teachers. Like people need to live there and their kids go to school. And so
Yeah.
by providing or having options for like workforce housing and projects like that, where if you can't, you can't just go in there and slash prices in half and make it affordable, but there are ways that people are working towards that kind of affordability, and those kind of things are really interesting to me because, I know teachers, like a lot of my son's teachers and a lot of our friends are teachers, and like to be a teacher in Breckenridge is, must be a lot of fun until you realize you can't live there because you can't afford it, or you have to travel like an hour to work, and that just doesn't work in the wintertime. And so like a lot of these kind of pressing issues, it's more interesting to try to find out solutions to those of like, um, things like that. And I'm sure, tiny home communities, those are pretty popular, both recreationally and for, something like a homeless problem. And so like those kind of solutions are very interesting. But I actually didn't know that, Elon Musk bought a tiny home business. That's something I'll have to look up when we're done here.
I don't think he bought a tiny home business. He just decided to like completely downsize from all
Oh,
his
from his stuff.
belongings.
Okay.
Yeah, just like lived
Oh, okay.
in
That makes more sense.
yeah, like there was an article. I'm not sure if it was like supposed to be satire, but people were like, yeah, like Elon Musk is gonna go crazy when everybody comes after him, and he actually clapped back and he's saying like, I actually don't own anything, and he posts like the picture of like his tiny home, which I thought was really
Yeah.
interesting.
No, that is
I
very
actually,
interesting.
yeah, I definitely agree with you too in the fact that like earlier you were saying that you want to build something and make something that somebody can be proud of. I was having an argument with my older brother. So to preface it, he was saying like, "Oh yeah, like his landlord was trying to like increase the rents on him, but like it's in California, so it's super tenant friendly.
Hmm.
Tenant friendly. But I think at the time they were trying to illegally raise the rates, like it was just
Right.
unreasonable. And I remember like stating like, well, kind of in the defense of like almost the landlord. But I was telling him like, well, I mean, like look at it from like two sides, but also like, I mean, like focus more on your side too. And he was like, look, man, you can't talk. You're a landlord. But at least like with my properties, especially like within the Williamsburg, Virginia area and the Newport News area, it's just like heavily filled with military personnel. And I'm proud enough to say that like even after the mortgage is paid, like I still get like around a 12% return. And for the tenant, they're able to get like some of the cheapest housing around. And like intentionally, that's what I wanted to
Right.
do. So yeah, like I agree with you when you say that you want to be able to create something that somebody could call a home
Yeah.
and something that they could be really proud of to live in. Um, yeah, yeah. I wanted to ask, especially though, what are unconventional sacrifices you had to make to get to where you're at right now?
I mean, I think that the whole business is unconventional, and so, like out of kind of our kind of friend group and our, like my kids' friends' parents, like out of all of those types of people, there's very little like entrepreneurs. So I feel like that path is unconventional in itself. Um, but I think that I think that what a lot of people don't realize is like I my brain doesn't like just shut off at 5 o'clock, like when the clock's over. And so I think that probably some of those sacrifices are, when you own a business, you're like always, it feels like you're always working and your hobby is your business, and you're, like half of the things you do are 100% geared towards, your business. And so I think maybe some of the sacrifices is like some of my mental like peace at times, because like it'll, I can be on vacation and like the business doesn't stop. And so unless I've put in like some very specific things in place to run it, it still, hinges on me. And so I think every entrepreneur is just trying to like not make themselves the bottleneck in their own business. But for a lot of years you have to be, you're kind of bootstrapping this thing. And so, you know I think that there's probably a lot of unconventional sacrifices inside of that most people who just have a 9 to 5 job probably can't understand. And there's, I've always said, like, sometimes I am envious of my friends who can, just shut it off at 5 o'clock and just go. They don't even have to worry about work or business or job or, Zoom calls or email. They don't have to worry about any of that because it's just understood that that's just their time. And I feel like my time's, here, but it's always being crowded by, the business or, different businesses that we run. So it's like, I think that that's a sacrifice that not a lot of people understand unless you're in it and you're worrying about it 24/7, like we do. So
We suffer more in imagination than in reality.
it's it's
And
it's also true.
I love that quote by Seneca. I actually saw that you do read some Greek literature as well, right? Some Greek stuff.
Yeah, I would consider myself a armchair stoic for sure.
Yeah, I would imagine that it helps to be more stoic about the entrepreneurial decisions of the day to day.
Yeah, it definitely does. It definitely does.
Yeah. What's one of the big things that you're tackling right now?
Um, so for me, it's actually a podcast launch. So
Nice.
after many years of like thinking about it, it was one of those things where I wasn't sure of exactly what I wanted to do. Obviously, on the real estate side, there's hundreds of podcasts, and they're all pretty similar. Like they're either interviewing, bigger name people, they're interviewing, you know, the youngest person possible with the most amount of units, for like that clickbait, like 19-year-old owns
Mm,
5,000 units and makes $1 million a month. And yeah, that'll get clicks
gotcha.
all day long, right? Um, or there are people who are trying to like funnel people into their coaching business or something like that. Like those are kind of like the three, real estate podcasts that I see out there. Um, and so I knew for sure I didn't want to just create another interview the same exact people over and over, podcasts. Like we've all heard from, Brandon Turner and,
Right.
everybody else in this business. Right. And I
Yep.
knew I didn't want to go down the path of like the clickbait titles. And I have no real interest in like creating a high ticket coaching business or something like that. So I always like put it on the shelf. Like, I want to do something, but I don't know what. And until I know what, I'm just gonna like not worry about it. And so, in the process of kind of developing a different podcast that I'm also shelving just for different reasons, but in the process of that, I really realized, um, it like kind of just came to me on how I really want to have this structured, and it's basically just wanting to give as much as possible and then have community and resources that are just there for people. So it's a lot about stories, so people's real estate story and their journey inside of, each season will just be a specific niche. And so we're starting off with house hacking, and so I'm talking to, cool people who just everyday normal people. They're not the 19-year-old with 5,000 units. They're like, they have a normal job and they're also doing cool stuff in real estate. And so it's more attainable, and people who are listening can actually relate to that. I can't relate to the 19-year-old with 5,000 units. Like, like I can't even do that. And I've been in the business for, coming on 20 years now. Um, so, like normal stories of people's actual success. And then in a kind of companion episode, we'll go through and we'll break down, the strategy of kind of exactly what they're doing to get there, and then how you can also take action on, achieving that same result as well. And so that's all well and good, but I just didn't realize like how much work it would take to get it from ideation all the way to the finish line on just time and format and structure and, like hosting platforms and just all this stuff that you just never ever think of. And so that's been like top of mind and got me more excited for that project than a lot than some of my other just normal projects that I do. And so that's been my kind of heavy lift for the last like 3 months. I was thinking this morning, and I was like, man, I've put off some things. I had like some really good momentum, and then I got busy, and then school started for my son, and then now I'm kind of working on it again. But I'm like, man, I thought I was going to launch this like mid August, and now it's September, and I'm looking at like an October launch, and so I'm like, man, what happened to those 2 months? And so now just kind of catching back up and making sure that those things are ready for the launch. And so that's been my experience, and I've never talked to like really other podcasters about that, and how how they went through it, or how their kind of launch went, or some people just like record one episode and launch it, and then they just like kind of roll into it. And I feel like I have to have like all these things kind of lined up and ready and set sort of in stone, so then I have like a really good path. Because if I do it once this week and then I forget for 2 weeks, or I get really busy, I know that that's not going to like serve anybody, like the audience or myself or anybody. So wanting to have time carved out, and then like a lot of things ready for it, have been pretty important and way more time consuming than I thought. So
Yeah, I surprisingly enough, actually, I decided to start my media company um, at the end of May.
no, nice. Yeah.
Actually, when I because I got out of the military in November,
Okay.
but like May was like the specific date that was like you're like done until like you're just not active duty anymore. So I was like, hey, might as well start a company. Like let's give this podcast a shot. And a lot of the greats, like Gary Vaynerchuk, Rich Cardona, like a lot of these people are actually saying if you're in the position that you're in, that yeah, like record 13 episodes,
Yeah.
especially if you're like niche down. And I actually find that really inspiring because like yes, I turned to bigger pockets when I was starting and I was looking for information, but I found that there was an overabundance of almost like these like super huge success stories that like I have like 50 multiple unit properties and I couldn't really find anybody that had one.
Yeah.
Like yeah, like hey, like I'm 19 and I have one.
Yeah.
Like that's insane. Like that's really good.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to actually hear yours because it's, I think that it's more inspiring for the everyday man like myself. And I think in our current society, definitely the culture of fast, of like fast success, fast riches, fast everything, is extremely promising.
Hmm.
Not very realistic sometimes,
Yeah.
but maybe I say that because I'm a little risk averse. Uh, yeah, actually, one of the big reasons I decided not to get into like house flipping was I was like, oh, like I am stressed out. Like, there's no way I could do this. So I've just turned to the buy and hold.
Yeah.
So yeah, happy with the buy and hold.
Yeah. You got to do what's right for you. And when I was talking to like a kid who's in college, and he just sold like part of a startup or something like that. So he's sitting on like 6 figures, and very cool story, right? But he's like trying to move at startup speed in the real estate world, with like starting off with
Mm,
no knowledge, right? But I mean, the good thing is that there's 100 ways to skin this cat. And so, but I always like Scott Trench, he's the CEO of Bigger Pockets, and
oh yeah.
he's a really good dude. And his strategy is literally just like buy one or two properties a year, do that for 20 years, and you're good. Like, you know and it feels like a lot of people are doing this, trying out this thing where they're like, how can I get to 100 properties as fast as possible? And it's like, I want it within 2 or 3 years. And you're like, well, that's probably attainable depending on a lot of different things. But there's also this other way where you can actually, like, they're like both, there's no right way to do it. But I always go back to Scott's story when I talk to people, because I'm like, look, like even he's just like, buy smart, buy a couple properties, and then you're still better off than you were. And you don't have to, maybe real estate's not your thing after like a year or two, and you're just burnt out. And so, you just got to do what's right for you and your skill set and your mental capacity. And if you're risk adverse and you're stressed out by flips, like, don't do flips.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was definitely it's because like I guess it was like the modicum of the content that I was consuming. I was just like, yeah, like everybody like super rich on bigger pockets is flipping, so that means I have
Right.
to. And I remember talking to like a bank. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I think I talked to like four or five like just traditional local
Okay.
banks, and I was like, "Here's my business plan." I forget which episode it was on, but I was like, "Yeah, here's my business plan. This is what I'm gonna do." And they're like, "No,
No.
like this is no."
No.
And I was like, "Oh, okay." And like at the time, like I don't know, like I probably was consuming like a lot of like David Goggins
Oh,
content or
sure,
something.
sure.
Where I was like, who's gonna carry the boat? So my mentality was like, well, I'm gonna get to like 1,000 no's to get to like 1,001 yeses.
Right.
Um, Eventually, I like burned out and fizzled out. I had like a conversation with a hard money
Yeah.
lender, and he was like, "Dude, like you have like no skin in the game." Like I was like, oh, "Yes, I do. Like I have a house like I can put up for
Yeah.
collateral." But yeah, like I agree. Like don't force, especially in the real estate world. Like I learned my lesson to not force a strategy that I was not proficient
Yeah.
at. And I think it's actually a good segue. What advice would you give to a young real estate investor who has zero experience?
Yeah, I mean, there's a time there where you have to definitely pay your dues with learning. Um, it is an uphill battle on a lot of fronts, but if you're at least educated on what you want to do, um, well, on kind of like kind of look at different strategies, see kind of what makes sense. Uh, Definitely analyze your assets, whether it's a lot of time, you're sitting on a bunch of money from a startup you just sold. Like, I don't know what that looks like for you, but definitely analyze your assets and kind of know what you're working with. So if you have a lot of time but not a lot of money, there's certain strategies that'll work for you and a lot that won't. If you have a lot of money and not a lot of time, there's definitely other strategies that will work for you too. Maybe the Scott Trench approach of just buying one or two properties a year and calling it good. Um, but really kind of like the gold comes when you can laser focus on what you want to do. Everybody gets very shiny object syndrome. um, like Bigger Pockets has a book of like how to invest in real estate, and there's like 15 different strategies in there. So you could read that and you can go, oh, I want to go do all 15. But that in reality just doesn't work. You have to like laser focus on one strategy, and then all of your then things just start lining up. Like once you go, okay, I want to flip properties, right? I have a little bit of money, I have a hard money lender who said yes. Now all of your actions and activities line up like pretty easily. You go, I need to go find some contractors, I need to go find some agents, I need to go find you know get in front of deals, now that some of your stuff is lined up. But if you're like focused on 15 different things, you're never going to like you're either never going to take action, or you're going to take some really dumb action that's like going to hurt you in the long run, or even the short even the short run. But once you've kind of got the education and then really laser focused on what you want to do, from there things become just so much easier and clearer. And I talk to dozens of real estate investors every month, and for different experience wise, but the new ones just seem to not, like, they just seem a little bit scattered. They're like, I read all these different books, I've watched 9,000 TikToks, I've watched from David Goggins to Grant Cardone, like I've watched it all, and they're just so scattered that they have no idea what to do or like what the next action step is. But once you've focused on that one thing, hey, I want to flip houses, like, in you go, well, I need financing, I need a down payment, I need a contractor, I need an agent, like I need maybe even more specialized education. Go read Jay Scott's house book on flipping houses. Like, read, like, get specialized education in that little field. Go shadow a house flipper, go out with contractors and really learn how to rehab budgets work. But until you're laser focused, you just have no idea what the next step is. But as soon as you're laser focused, you know exactly what those steps are in order to get to that goal. So like, that would be my advice.
Yeah. Do you feel like you are insatiable in your conquest to acquire more real estate, or is there Do you see like a stopping point, like a fixed stopping point where you're like, if I have this, it's enough?
Yeah. I think insatiability would be like, man, I don't even know what the word for that would be. It would just be like, it'd just be like narcissistic hubris or something. I don't know if I would want to like hang out with people who have a, insatiable like lust for more properties or something like that. Like it seems like everybody I talk to does have kind of either a stopping point or like a slowdown point, whether that's age or number of units or whatever that looks like. And like I said before, like I kind of run a little bit more of a lifestyle business, and so I will sacrifice some of my business time to go make sure that I'm like at my son's track meet or there to pick him up from school. Like those things are way more important to me than working 60 hours a week just to get like another property or something like that. Like, so for me, like the answer is pretty easy. It's like once I hit a certain number on passive cash flow, I could really just do whatever I want at that point. Um, and so and then I could, the only reason I would build from there would be to maybe fund some of those other passion projects like we talked about earlier, maybe development,
Yeah.
sustainability, more, more giving back, like those kind of things. Because at that point, it just becomes more interesting than just more properties. Like, um, there's only like so much money you can spend or so much money you can make, and I don't like. I live in a house built in '98 in a an eastern suburb of Denver. I'm not living in like a crazy mansion driving crazy cars. That kind of stuff just doesn't interest me at all. So if I had 10 times the money, I just I wouldn't know what to do with it. Like I could either scale up my lifestyle, which I don't have any interest in, um, or the more interesting part would be to have more money to go into other projects of giving back and things like that. So yeah, for me, there's definitely a point. I'm probably never going to stop. I think that um, I think that there'll always be something that's interesting, whether it's an interesting development project or workforce housing or whatever that looks like. um, I don't think I could ever just go sit on a beach and like do nothing. so so yeah, there's definitely a point where it's going to slow down, but um, yeah, so that's where we're at.
What does the word freedom look like to you when you visualize it?
Yeah, freedom. Um, Freedom's a lot of things, and for me, it's definitely it's tied pretty heavily to financial freedom. Living in the U.S., obviously we have a lot of different freedoms, um, but yeah, like having my basics covered of between healthcare and housing and obviously food and um, things like that, like that gives you a sense of kind of clarity and freedom that I don't think that I'd be sane without it. But so whether that's a W-2 job and you're like your basics are covered and you're doing things that you enjoy to do and family is important to you, and so you hang out with your family a lot or whatever that looks like that could that's freedom on one level, and I'm no different. Like if my basics are covered and then I have time, to be involved with my family, that's pretty much like I would be happy there pretty much forever of that level of freedom. But yeah, it's that's kind of in a nutshell what it means.
Yeah. I feel fortunate enough to know that I also don't have like extremely expensive taste. Like there's a I think there was a post. I'm not sure if it was like a Bigger Pockets post or if it was like just a real estate Facebook group, but it's like pulling up to a party and it's like a super old beater. That's me. Like I have like a 2008 Honda Civic, love it to death. Like it's A to B, and I actually love it. Like I actually appreciate like its look. I mean, it's got a spoiler on it. I mean,
Nice.
I
Heck yeah.
kind of like looks like a rice racer a little bit, but yeah, like I'm glad that I not like trying to buy the mansion, and I think it's actually like what I've noticed is a lot of my peers and a lot of my friends now are starting to adopt that mindset of shamelessly downgrading if it means that you can have more in terms of like experience as opposed to like more
Right.
stuff,
Yeah.
like more things. So
Yeah, and that's like we talked about earlier. I mean, that's a key part of kind of the end of my mission statement over here is like collecting experience rather than material things. Like,
yeah,
material things at the end of the day, like they just won't make you happy. But that experience with your family or your kids or your spouse or your friends, like those are the ones that are priceless. And so, money does pay for certain things inside of there. But if I had like, I don't know, if I had like 20 cars downstairs, like that would not make me happy. That would stress me out to no end. you
right.
know?
That's a lot of insurance.
Yeah, it's a lot of insurance. And like I think I bought, I bought like a 2006 Mini Cooper S new, drove it back from New York where I bought it from. And even though it's like a 30, what was it, like $38,000 car or something like that, it was like the most expensive car that I've ever bought. And I bought it brand new. It was my first brand new car. And I was like terrified to park it anywhere because I didn't want anybody to like ding it, with a grocery cart or like a door or something like that. And I just found like my older car, I didn't care as much and it didn't stress me out. And so I was like, why do I have this thing that just causes me more stress?
Yeah,
So it was kind of like an early eye opening of like, okay. And if, I look at, a couple of friends of mine have some really nice cars and it just like, I can't imagine just driving like a, $200,000 car somewhere. And I would just be worried that somebody's like messing with it or something like I don't want that kind of worry, man. I got I got other things to worry about.
I was actually on a date, and there was a my date at the time asked me like, "What is your dream car?" And I was like, "You actually just saw it." And she's like, "Oh, like, are you talking about the Maserati?" And I was like, "No, it's the 2014 Honda Accord." And she looked at me like, "Are you serious?" And I was like, "Oh
Oh
yeah,"
yeah.
because I have a 2008 for now. So yeah, that's just yeah. I agree. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. My
Um,
1997 Forerunner that I drive most of the time would agree with you as well.
let's go, Toyota gang, nice. But what made you want to move from? Well, not you're still in it, but what can't use the word hard hat. How did you have the desire to become an author?
Oh man. It's a little bit of a long story, but in short, I had no interest in being an author. And I'd been writing some articles for Bigger Pockets for their site, and I was enjoying that process for the most part. It was casual. It was just like every month I might write one or two articles. It wouldn't take me like too crazy long, maybe an hour or two a month. And I enjoyed that process well enough, and I just happened to be the right place at the right time. So, um, I live in Denver, and Bigger Pockets is headquartered in Denver, and so when I moved back from Phoenix, I just started hanging out there. Like, I was just kind of like that guy who's just like, hey, can I bring you guys lunch, or can I like, hey,
That's funny.
Josh, can I go, buy you coffee, or like, let's go have some coffee or something like that. And so I was just kind of like this guy who's always around, and I'm more than happy to help out because they're a huge part of my, my success as an entrepreneur has been through the, obviously the content and the connections that I've made there. And so, I'm always happy to help out in any way that I can. And like 2012 was their first conference, and I was like volunteering. I was just like I want to be there. Like I'm gonna go to the the speaking events, but I'm gonna also like help with badges and like just help out any way I can, that I can. And so, a couple years later, I had gone out to lunch with Josh and Brandon, and we were hanging out in Josh's office. He's the founder, and they're just like, hey, when are you going to write a book for us, kind of like offhanded comment. And I was like, well, I wasn't planning on it, but we started talking about it a bit more, and they seemed like they were actually pretty serious about it. Like, well, why don't you submit an outline of what the chapters would look like? This was, we were talking about a wholesaling book, since I was doing a lot of wholesaling at the time. And so I was like, well, that's an easy lift, right? I just have to think of an arc of, A to B on, or A to Z on wholesaling, right? So I wrote up a 12 chapter just index. Like that's all they really wanted, was like an index and maybe like a short description of the chapter. Sent it over to Brandon, who was doing a lot of the publishing decisions at the time, and he was like, hey, this looks pretty good. If you want to write a chapter so we can just kind of get a feel of your like writing style and everything, go for it. And so I ended up writing 2 chapters because I just like was excited about it, I guess. And I submitted those, and it was probably 2 or 3 weeks later that, that they were like, hey, if you want to do this thing, we'll green light it. We'll send you over a contract. And it was something that I was really busy. I remember at the time, this is like 2015 or so, maybe like 2016, like very busy inside my business. And I knew that taking this on would just be, it would be a lot to take on. But I also knew that I couldn't say no. Like these kind of opportunities don't come every day. And so to have, if somebody was like, hey, if you want to write a book and then self-publish it, I would have just been like, no, man, I'm just going to go do my own thing, like, and just go back to work, like go back to my business. But to be actually like under a publisher, like that's an opportunity that I couldn't pass up, because I knew it just wouldn't go out on Amazon and just be like self-publish, a spiral that seems to happen out there where things get forgotten pretty quickly. And so I was like, well, this is an opportunity that I can't pass up. And so, so I said yes and got to work. And that's kind of how it happened in a nutshell. I had like zero desire to be like, hey, I want to pitch you this idea for a book, and I'm really excited to write a book. I was busy in my son was like 6 at the time. So, it's like he's starting school, and he's,
Yeah.
their 6-year-old energy and stuff. So it's just like, I don't, at first I was just like, I don't even know if I want to do this. But once they kind of greenlit it, it was like, I can't say no. I'm going to kick myself in a year or two, and then I'll just kick myself for the rest of my life if I just said no to an opportunity like this. And so, I'm glad I said yes, but I wasn't looking to do it. So
Did, did you have like a writing process that you stuck to, or were you like, all right, man, like I'm gonna write it in like 1 hour today. I'm gonna write 5 minutes
yeah,
tomorrow. Like, how was your writing process like?
yeah. So I got a lot of help from Brandon in that respect. So Brandon Turner, he's an author and was on their podcast for a long time. Um,
Yeah.
and he's written probably, I don't know, 10 different books by now. And so he was instrumental in helping me with my process. And so he and I were on a shared Google spreadsheet of every day we were trying to write 1,000 words every day. And so he would log his, I would log mine, and we just kind of went from there. So uh within I think 30 days, no, how long would it be? It'd be longer than that. Within like 90 days or something like that, you should have enough content for a book that would then get trimmed down to like 70,000 words or something like that. So that was the
Mm.
idea, was I got a lot of help from him in that process. And so it gave me a clear idea of like, I don't have to write like a whole chapter. I don't have to like go through all this. I just have to follow my outline, follow my index, and then write 1,000 words, and that's it. Like, you might go back and you might clear out half of it. It may not be good, but at least you got that much done. And so that spreadsheet and that process really helped, number one, keep me accountable, but number two, gave me like a really easy chunk down goal to achieve every day. So 1,000 words a day, you know, within 3 months, you'll have a book. That's it.
You make it sound so easy.
No, it definitely wasn't that easy. I was probably the slacker on that. Like, I missed a lot of those days. I wish maybe I could still find that spreadsheet and just see because his was pretty consistent and mine was a little bit more spotty, but we both got it done. I think he was writing his How to Invest in Rental Properties book. and I was writing my book at the same time. So
How did you have the time, or let me rephrase that. Where did you find the
yeah,
time? Because you definitely had to find the time to be a dad, a
yeah.
husband, an author, and a businessman.
I mean, I had to carve out. I either had to carve out time during the day and just be more efficient with other things. And so I think at the time I was doing a number of different flips, and obviously we were still marketing and doing acquisitions and stuff. And I'm a licensed agent as well, so I'm doing agent activities as well. So I either had to just carve out like 11 to noon like every day, um, but a lot of times it would get pushed to, like, I kind of see my work day as like, I don't know, 8 to 4 something like that. But then I have like, especially at the time, I had this kind of second window of when everybody was asleep. So my wife goes to bed pretty early.
Mhm.
She goes to bed like at 8 because she wakes up and works out. Um, and obviously my son at the time was 6, so he goes to bed around 8. So from like 8 to 11 or 8 to midnight, I always saw that window as like I can get some extra things done. And so I would use that window in order to crank out 1,000 words. It wasn't always probably the most efficient thing because you're a little bit more tired at night, and it's kind of hard to like creatively you know uh do anything that late at night. But we got it done eventually. So
Like when you say that, in my mind, I'm like, yeah, like I could totally do that. But already in the back of my mind, I'm visualizing myself like typing, and it'll be like V. Like it's just like the same sentence. Yeah. So props to you for
yeah,
that.
no, and I mean, there was a lot of that too, where I would have like kind of a creative flow, and I'd be going, and I look back at it and I go, I think I've already talked about this. And that's what's kind of hard about the scope of like an entire book is not, you're so close to it that getting like that 30,000 foot view of like that whole arc is really hard because you've obviously thought about these things forever. You've put some of them down. And I did find areas where I had totally repeated myself of like, oh, I'm talking about this marketing strategy up here. And then I would talk about a bunch of different stuff. And then I would like talk about it down here like I've never talked about it before in the whole book. And so sometimes you're just too close to it and you're just like, and so yeah, you have to like reread. I've probably read this book like 25 times at this point of just going back through it and cleaning it up, and obviously the editing process. But yeah, you're totally right. There was times where I think I just like kind of zombie, like probably just typed like the same chapter twice.
Wow. Yeah, I mean that I've found, at least for me, it's a lot easier just because like whenever I do podcasts, it's just pretty free flow. Like it's as authentic and as awkward as somebody might find me. But yeah, like have you thought about like scripting your podcast where like you have like set topics? Because like I was on a podcast recently with the his name is Scott Janae. He's the CEO of Magazine
All
Jukebox,
right.
and his was like pretty, like it was like set in
Yeah.
structure. Like it was like here's an intro, here's like the body, here's the end.
Yeah, and so and part of this like pre-production is really hammering down what you want this thing to look like, right? Because it can go 100 ways. You can go a 3 hour rambling podcast which has an audience, like people will absolutely listen to that. And then you have all the way down to like 10 or 15 minute episodes where it's a little bit more like those have to be structured, right? And
Yeah,
so in my ideation of this whole thing was like, I do want these to be a little bit on the shorter side so that we can, somebody who's driving to a property or driving to the grocery store or something like that can get through, one or half of one or whatever that looks like without having to commit like 3 hours to this thing. And so
yeah,
that has to be formatted and that has to be structured in order to fit within that window. And so mine definitely has a set like kind of a set boundary. So like intro, and then with a guest it has like a set format, and there's it can get a little loose inside of there, which is totally fine. But as long as you're hitting the main points of like, hey, we're here to tell a story, we're here to learn about, the strategy of how they got their success with that house hack. In our first season, we're doing house hacking. So, talking to house hackers, that laser focus is like, exactly the questions you're going to ask. I'm not going to ask about like syndication. I'm not going to ask about, 10 other things. I'm going to ask about their house hacking process of how they found that property, what that looks like, what the numbers look like, how that's changed them financially. Like, has this been a benefit to them financially in their journey for financial freedom? And so, once I change seasons to a different strategy, like a burr strategy or something like that, then that will dictate, where those questions go. And so I kind of like having a little bit more of structure, at least on my end, because then I know, okay, I'm going to talk to this person for 30 minutes, so it's not a huge waste or a way on their time, not waste, but a way down on their time. And then we'll edit it down to be about 20 minutes, and um, it'll convey all the things that we promised. We're going to tell a story, we're going to talk about the success, we're going to talk about how this has changed them financially, and what their next steps are, like what they want to do next. And so, yeah, having that format really helps me and my dumb brain figure out exactly like the boundaries to keep within.
Yeah. Is real estate going to be the niche that you stay in?
Yeah, for sure. I can't really think of something that I would want to do that's not real estate related. It would probably be so niche and weird that nobody would listen to it if I if I didn't. It would be like, you know bands in the 90s that only me and my friends listened to, or something like that. And then I don't know.
That'd be a pretty good niche,
It
honestly.
might be, but no, for this I really want to keep it, stay in the lanes and be very hyper specific, because if I am trying to build a community and trying to build resources and a place for people to come and and have access to tools and resources and different things that you need when you're at that level of real estate, whether it's beginner to you know have done a couple deals, you need different skill set than somebody who's been doing this for 10 years and just needs like a mastermind and extra resources over there. This is definitely, if I'm trying to stay within that niche, then I have to stay within real estate. So that's where we're at.
So, what advice would you give somebody who's trying to solidify their brand?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question, and it's going to sound lame, but it definitely just comes back to knowing what that end goal is. uh so like, I think personal brand is a really weird thing. Like, I don't know very many people who are like really good at it. I think it's just something that you like either repetitively figure out over time, and then you just realize like, oh, this is who I am or what my brand is. Like, if you're if you're on Instagram and you're talking about like cooking or something like that, like that that's going to dictate a lot of where your focus is and where that brand goes. But if you're on Instagram all day and you just talk about 10 different subjects and you're just scattered, you might have a lot harder time than kind of sticking with one thing for a while, and then it's easier to branch out from there than just trying to be like a be all, a be all every man type thing. So like, for I think it's just the same exact um, advice as real estate. It's just becoming like really focused on what you want, because that'll dictate a lot of your actions from there. Like, if you're like, I want to be an influencer that helps people with I don't know, free makeup tips or something like that. Like that will dictate your entire strategy right there. But if you're going into it without knowing where the end, where the destination is, you're just going to drive all over the map and feel like you're lost.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we have hit the closing time. So I usually like to ask if our guest has any closing thoughts, any last minute things you wanted to say.
Yeah. Hopefully if you're out there and if you're feeling a little bit lost on these things, I think that we've talked about a lot of, a lot of good strategy to get focus and clarity on what you need, and then all of your things back out from there. And so, I don't know. I've really enjoyed the conversation and really enjoyed our time, and you have really good questions, and the card game is definitely a it definitely makes you think. So I've never been asked those questions before, which is a really good hallmark of a good host. So thanks for being a good host.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Guys, this is Auxano number 5, and this is a Mr. Anson Young. Thank you so much.
Thank you.